Today I'm going to do a layered painting of the Totoro scene in resin. I got this idea when I was searching for paper craft online, and I came across something called a paper theater. It gives you a three-dimensional view of an anime scene, and I think maybe I can create something similar in resin. It's gonna be my first time doing this, so let's see how it goes. First, I need to create a blank canvas. In this case, since I'm using resin, it'll just be a clear layer. The resin I'm using is a two-part epoxy resin. When mixing equal parts of hardener and resin together, a chemical reaction will start to happen, and the resin will cure into a hard clear piece, which I can paint on. Here I'm using a torch to burst the bubbles so the final piece can be nice and smooth. I first painted the sky as a background, but then I realized it's very hard to paint evenly because the resin is very slippery. Also, it makes it look flatter because my mold is very shallow. I won't be able to create enough distance between the sky and the trees. So I wiped it off and started fresh. This time I'm gonna keep the background clear. I think it'll look much better. I want this layer to feel far away, so I'm using a darker but less saturated green color. When I put the next layer with a lighter color, it'll pop more. Resin is self-leveling. That means I need a level surface for it to cure flat. My mold is pretty shallow, so I need to keep my layer thin, but if each layer is too close, it won't have enough distance between the layers to show the depth. The second layer of resin is dry, so I can paint another layer of background. This time I'm painting tree branches, some lighter leaves, and grass. I'm using a tiny brush to get a lot of details in. I'm using acrylic paints. To make it stick better, I use as little water as possible, or no water at all. Okay, so we're finally ready for our main character Totoro. This has completely dried. I have 3 layers in here. Each layer takes a whole day to dry, so I have waited 3 full days for this. I'm gonna put Totoro on the next layer, and after that I'm gonna put 2 or 3 more layers of scenery on top. Depends on how much I can fit in this mold. So in the end, Totoro will be sandwiched in between the scenery layers and will be the center of attention. So I better not screw this up. The reference photo I'm using actually has more characters. I simplified it to fit my small canvas, and I put Totoro more in the center. To paint the right shape of Totoro, I first use lighter strokes to find the edge of his body, and then I start to fill in the color. I learned my lesson and used a Q-tip to fix errors this time. This is so handy and leaves no lint behind. To make Totoro pop more, I'm strengthening the shadows on his body. For his eyes, I first put a few dots of white to find the general area, and then I complete it with a super tiny watercolor brush. This brush is softer than the one I used at the beginning, and I find it easier to release and put down more paints. And it has great control, so it's really good for details work like his nose and his whiskers. I started to see the shadows projected by the painting on different clear layers. I'm so excited to continue tomorrow for the next layer. The clear resin on top somehow enhances the painting and makes it look so good. And for this layer, I'm painting the mini Totoro. Similar to the big one, I sketch the shape first and then fill in the color. Even though I use opaque white, it will still look a bit transparent if I just put down one layer. So I put down a few layers until it's smooth and opaque enough. So is it a mini Totoro? To be honest, I just watched the Totoro movie yesterday because I thought I should be familiar with the subject I'm painting. Also, I'm always intrigued by Miyazaki films' background. They're always so beautifully hand-painted, and one day I want to try recreating them in watercolor. After 5 layers, it's finally done. I'm so excited to peel it out from the silicone mold. I love how it turned out. Moving the painting around, I'm amazed how these thin layers can still create such good level of separation and depth. It's like the anime scene is frozen in this block of resin. I'm gonna leave it on my table because I find it very interesting just to pick it up and look at it from different angles. I have to thank Paper Theater to give me such a great inspiration. If you're curious of what paper theater is, stay tuned for my next video.